Well, hello, welcome. I'm Marcie Billen. I am a resident in Norman, Oklahoma. And this weekly show, is to help you, first of all, get to know Norman a little bit better if you don't know it. Maybe you're thinking about moving here, or maybe you just moved here and you just want to understand a little bit more about what's going on. And then also maybe you want to catch up on some news in a fun way. I think I'm fun. I feel fun. So so this is the show. Like I said, I live in Norman. I am a real estate agent. If you have any questions as I'm talking, I'm going to be going over some different things, including the train derailment. If any of you saw the train derailment, I didn't get to see it up close. I'm going to show you the video because it's pretty crazy. And then there is also interest rates. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some housing initiatives that I think Norman's going to be taking on, or they're at least thinking about, which makes me very excited. And then we'll talk about OU starting. And then lastly, the Turnpike news. If you don't want to know what I'm talking about with Turnpike news, then maybe you haven't lived here long enough yet. If you drive on Indian Hills, you'll definitely know what the Turnpike news is. All right, let's get started. So where I'm getting my my news from is going to be from like Norman Transcript, which is our local newspaper. And then we also have the Oklahoman. And I also have this like Google notification set for Norman every single day. Some of the stuff I'm going to be covering is not Norman, but it may affect us here in Norman, which is why I'm going to talk about it, or it might just be interesting to me. So I want to talk about it because it's my show. I can do what I want. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. If you want to say hello to me, please drop them in the comments. I can see all of the comments, so please understand that I'm here. Definitely interrupt with your questions, dropping those in the comments, and I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see what I am reading as well. All right, let's jump in. Pipe in if you have anything to say or want to add anything. I appreciate it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the train derailment. I saw this. I was actually driving back. I went to Austin last week and I saw this, and I think I saw it on Instagram, maybe. Yeah, probably Instagram, the Signed Oklahoma account. If you don't follow them, definitely go follow them. They're super interesting. They cover news in a really fascinating way. So let me share my screen with you. I have everything kind of queued up here. Cool. So this is the Oklahoman that I'm reading in now. This is technically like a paper out of Oklahoma City. I do have a subscription for it. I don't get the actual newspaper unless I like go to a coffee shop or something. So this is the train derailment. So this is 2 miles. 2 miles? Yes, 2 miles directly north of my house. I live pretty close to these same railroad tracks. So how it works in Norman is like the train rolls through several times a day. I notice it in the evening time, and it does. They park the train in Norman. Like they'll park like this section of it between Rock Creek and downtown. So they only block one of the crossings whenever they do that, and you can easily get around it. So that's why they do it, I'm pretty sure. Hey, Sophie. Oh, it's really nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. So they only block one of the crossings whenever they park the train. But this thing was crazy. Like it was 22 cars. I know it's a chain reaction issue, but it feels like a lot, right? It feels like a lot to me. So it's funny because if you look, I know you can see my mouse just like a little bit, but like where I'm like I'm circling this pool right here. I sold that house last year. And so we were texting our client about that because it was pretty funny. I mean, funny and not funny. It's not funny, of course, but it is a really big deal. These pictures were crazy to me. That 22 cars, just kind of took a dive. So what they were carrying was like some sort of plastic pellet, but they did go out in hazmat suits at first. But then it like wasn't a big deal. So I'm going to show you. I mean, it is a big deal. It's a huge deal. It's a big deal, but it wasn't hazardous. Thank goodness. Let me show you the video. I found this on like North Texas, something or other. So hopefully this will play for us. So oops, we want to watch the beginning. So this is of the cars actually derailing. And I think it's funny because all these cars end up turning around because they're like, we just need to get to work. Like, this is a big deal. So these trucks are turning around, but they're going to show us like the overhead view here in a second. Hey, Brian, it's good to see you. We talked a lot today. All right, nice. There they go. So what you can't hear in this, and of course you can't, it's the sound. Like, I just wonder how it sounded, right? Like, because this looks like it would be super loud. So that's what the tracks looks like. It sucks. Like, it really sucks. I think it's all cleaned up now. I drove near it today, but I didn't go down there to look at it. There's all the white little pellets that it spilled. So that's in Southmore. Okay. If you have any more questions, just let me know. You can drop them in the comments. The next thing that I wanted to cover, let's see. So this is the same article. It's just the Norman transcript. I read both. Let's see. Just make sure I'm on track here. So interest rates is what I was going to talk about next. I started off with like a really interesting thing. These interest rates, like, it's interesting for sure. Maybe not as interesting to some people. If you are thinking about purchasing a house, this may be of interest to you. So I read this article and I was like, it's kind of a boring article. It just doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't have an understanding of what is going on in the market. So basically, what happened with sales in Oklahoma is our sales are still going up, meaning like prices are still edging up just a little bit. Sales went down 14% in total compared with June from July. And a lot of this, to make it make sense for you, is because people who are in their homes and have a like less than 3% interest rate, they don't want to move because they're very comfortable. They have a very affordable house that they're living in, so they don't want to move. So in Oklahoma, we've always had this issue. I don't see it going away. We have an issue of not having enough homes. We have a lot of people moving in. Oklahoma City went from being the 27th largest city in Oklahoma, in the nation, in the United States, to being the 20th. So 27 to 20th, like, that's a huge, huge jump for us. And it's great. And it causes prices to go up. So the median price last month, July, was $396,000. The median price in Oklahoma City is $260,000. So we still have a lot of demand. And I'm definitely seeing that. I was in some multiple offer situations just this weekend, well below the average, but still. This is like what they're showing for interest rates. There's rumors that interest rates are going to go up this week. I don't know if that's true. I hope it's not, for everyone's sake, but it could be. And we'll deal with it if that happens. All right. I wanted to scroll down here and share some of these numbers with you. So this says that the U.S. housing inventory increased 3.8% in July compared with June to a 3-month supply. What does that mean? What is a 3-month supply? What the crap are we talking about? So when we talk about a market, we have this talk about supply. Demand is really high when supply is low. Right now in the Oklahoma City metro, we have about a 2.1 month supply of homes, meaning that if we put things on the market, nothing like another house didn't go on the market, it would take a little over 2 months to sell everything that we currently have on the market. That's what supply means. A balanced market, so that's pretty extreme seller's market. We were in less than a month at sometimes, especially during 21 and 22. So what that means then is we are in an extreme seller's market. A balanced market is 6 months. So to give you an idea, Oklahoma, even during the 2008 recession, which really hit hard after the year 2008, we were never, ever in a buyer's market, never had that, 6 months or more of inventory. And since they stopped building so many houses in 2008 and after, we just have this demand problem where we have more people than we have houses. I think there are ways to fix that, but that's the current issue that we're in right now. If you have any more questions, please let me know. This article is decent. I think this picture cracks me up. They just took a picture of this. We call this a directional sign. They took a picture of this directional sign and just put it in here. Anyway, I just thought it was funny. That was funny to me because it just seems silly. So yeah, cool. All right. So then the next thing I wanted to talk about that I thought was really interesting was there was this article in the Norman Transcript. It looks like it was on Sunday. So ADUs, if you don't know what an ADU is, it is an accessory dwelling unit. It is, in other words, like the new urbanism people that I tend to follow that I really like, they call it a granny flat so that your granny can live in your backyard. And I'm seeing this with more and more people. And I have more and more people asking for these granny flats. And most places in Norman are not zoned for this, and you cannot do this, but it just depends. So this is saying that it's talking about Plano, Texas. So I guess in Plano, they've been looking at allowing more people to have granny flats, either in their backyard or doing zoning to put them in the front yard, which I thought was a little bit nuts. But then I read it and it totally made sense to me. So Plano, Texas is double the size of Norman. Plano is 288,000 in population. It says it right here. And then Norman is 128,000 in population. That does not include any of our students at all. Okay. I loved that they interviewed Richard McCown for this. So Richard McCown is one of the owners of Ideal Homes. Ideal Homes is, I believe, the second largest builder of homes in Norman, Home Creations being the first. I personally live in an Ideal home. I love it. It's amazing. And basically what he said here, which I was like, that makes sense, is we need to stop with the front yards. We have so much space in our front yards and it's such a waste. It's an environmental waste is what he was talking about. So it's an option that they're looking into. We have kind of a task force going on to study this to see what can be done to create more affordable housing options in Norman. Where's the part that he gives this? I love it. What he says, the front yard is the most irrigated crop in America. It's 4 times the size of the corn crop, and it's useless. Not only is it a useless waste of water resources, it's the biggest source of pollution. There are some houses in Norman that have giant front yards. I personally have a very small front yard. I'm pretty sure because Richard McCown built my house and he was like, y'all don't need a big front yard. I have a big backyard. So it's cool. But this might be a really interesting thing that comes about in Norman, and I'm really excited for the options this would create. All right. I want to talk about OU starting. So OU started, I think it's starting school this week or next week. It doesn't matter because they're all back. All the kids, they're back. And what that does is it can create traffic, just straight up traffic. The university is a very special part of our community. As a Norman resident, I did go to the University of Oklahoma. I graduated in 2011. I spent 4 years. It was amazing. I loved it. There's some really cool stuff. And OU is basically like a park, so I love hanging out on campus. And I get a cup of coffee and walk basically the whole thing, the mile, and walk back, and it's the best day ever. So we change the way we drive whenever the students come back. We don't drive to campus as much. They walk around a lot, which is totally understandable. They have to walk around, and you have to tack on 5-10 minutes to your day, depending on the time of day, if you're driving over there. Whenever they're gone in the summer, because like we're not a summer campus, so people don't stay here in the summertime. Even a lot of professors leave. They like in the summer we can go wherever we want. We can park wherever we want. It just doesn't matter, and we do. That's what we do as Norman residents. And now that the students are back, there are just certain places that we don't drive. I don't drive down Lindsay very much, or if I do, I turn on Barry. Let me see. I don't have a map up for us really quick, but basically like getting around campus as much as possible so that we don't get bunged up in the traffic. And people always talk about traffic and like they talk about Norman like all we are is a university. We're a town of 128,000 people. It's really big for Oklahoma. Oklahoma City is the largest city in Oklahoma, and Tulsa is the second largest, and Norman is the third. Whenever I moved to Norman, I was completely overwhelmed. I came from a town of like 15,000 people, and Norman completely overwhelmed me. I didn't know half of it existed while I was in school, and that's how a lot of students are. Most students just come to school here and they never stay. I am special. I stayed. So they're saying in this article here, which I thought was a pretty good article, that this year's freshman class is composed of 5,212 students, an 11% increase in new students over the last year, and a sign of continued growth for OU. That's good for the economy of Norman. I'm not a sports person. I know the first game is in 2 weeks because apparently I'm having a party at my house, which is fine. I'll be outside on the patio whenever that's going on, probably reading my book. I think we're playing Arkansas State. And those days, the game days are the most traffic heavy in Norman. But it's such even though I don't like sports, it is a cool feeling to be a part of that. It is a culture that Norman thrives on. Joining the SEC next year, I think it's next year. That's what everyone keeps telling me. It's going to bring a lot of money to our town. So we'll see how that goes. I think that there will be some slow but steady changes. How many square miles is Norman? 100 and it was 89. Let's look it up because I have it in a lot of my videos. Oh, 178.76. Yeah, I was close. It was like 169. Yeah. 178.76. It's really big. Norman is giant. I have some videos about how big it is. The last video that I did, I was comparing it to Moore. So yeah, it's a large city in terms of how the land mass essentially. One thing about Norman though is I think it's 72nd Street and maybe 84th out by the lake. You can't like every house is on 10 acres, every single house. You can't have like smaller than that. So it makes a big difference for sure. Another article that I pulled up was directly from OU. I think this is interesting. They did this like class photo 2027 and then like have all these stats like highest number of Davis United World. I don't know what that means. I have no idea. No idea. But all the stats are in here. It's really interesting. I like watching people learn, so that's really fun too. This is a cool, like what they did with this. So if you have any more questions about that, let me know. Cool. We have one more thing to cover, and it's confusing, and I apologize. The last thing that I'm going to cover is the Turnpike. So Norman, they announced this, it feels like yesterday, but I'm pretty sure it was 2 years ago. They announced that they were going to do a Turnpike extension in Norman. And the Turnpike extension, this is the map, the current map, and you can go to this website. It's called accessoklahoma.com. And then there's a drop down and it'll take you to the Norman stuff. So this here, hopefully you can see that really well. I can zoom in a little bit more. So this is Norman. OU is like literally right here. Down here, yes, we do have a town called Slaughterville. I know. It sounds bad. It's not, but down here, this blue line is where they're wanting to do this turnpike extension. In Oklahoma, we have turnpikes. Turnpikes are toll roads, but we call them turnpikes. I don't know of another state that calls them this. Maybe they do. I don't know. Everyone has a pike pass. That's how you pay for it. I have a pike pass on my car. It's cheaper if you do it that way. So they're wanting to build this bypass that goes around Norman, even though we have I-35 all the way through Norman. Yeah. So it would shoot out up here at I-40, which would essentially, in my understanding, make it easier for people driving north from Texas and then go to I-40. There's another turnpike right here called the Kickapoo. I drive it a decent amount because it's another bypass around Oklahoma City. And then they're going to connect it at Newcastle. So like right now, this is on Indian Hills, which is the road that separates Norman from Moore. So that train derailment was a mile from this, I believe, maybe a little bit less. I mean, it would have been into the Indian Hills section as well. So there are lots of people in Norman who are fighting this turnpike tooth and nail because they're going through some pretty big neighborhoods and taking out some houses. So I try to keep up to date on this. It's a lot of attorney speak. I wanted to show you this because like someone brought it up in one of the groups that I manage on Facebook. It's a like home buying tip. And so like every time if someone's worried whenever they're purchasing a house with me, if someone's worried that the turnpike is going to go through their backyard, this is where we check it. This changes too. So like you can't, it's going to change. Is it going to change like, oh, we're going to move this on the other side of I-35? Probably not. But it does change as we go through. This is the latest news for fighting the turnpike. You will see all these hilarious signs. I need to take some pictures for you guys. And I get it. I get not wanting to give up your home that you've lived in for 40 or 50 years. Yes. But this is part of what they're doing to fight it. This is Stan Ward. I was in jury duty last year, and he was actually the plaintiff's attorney, and he does such a good job at like being very detailed. So I mean, I know why he's fighting this, and I think that's amazing, and I know he cares so much for Norman. He's a very detailed human being. So I sat in a courtroom for 6 days listening to him being very detailed. So basically, they're saying that the last meeting, I think this is what they're saying. They're saying that in the last meeting, they didn't have the right, like they didn't say what they were going to talk about in the notes. That's what I understand to be going on. It may be different. But that's, as I read this, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. They have this, they're supposed to tell the public what they're going to be talking about. And Stan is saying that they didn't. And the Supreme Court is saying that they did. And so that's what this thing that says justices ruled 5-3 to overturn the district court ruling that found the agency willfully violated the Open Meeting Act, basically saying like they weren't being public with their plans. I don't know. I'm not an attorney, so I don't know the law that well. I do understand that hopefully this is a good way for them to fight it. The thing is, like even the Kickapoo Turnpike, which opened, I think 2 years ago, maybe 3, everything just kind of sped up and slowed down at the same time during the pandemic. But they fought it forever, the Kickapoo Turnpike, and it goes through a lot of people's farmland, and it still happened. Is it a good thing for Norman and for Oklahoma in general? I think that's probably a personal opinion and not something that we can foresee the future of, if that makes sense to you. So it's something that I follow because it's going to be a very long process for them, like getting into this and actually building Pike. So that is all I had for you today. As I said, I'm Marcie Billen. I am a real estate agent in Norman. I work all over the Oklahoma City metro. And the brokerage that I work for is Keller Williams Mulinix. I have my own team. I help a lot of people move here and move within Norman. If you need anything, please let me know. My contact information is going to be in the description. And thank you so much for joining me. I really had fun today.